Arnold.
All right, here we are. Dean Arnold podcast. Today is June 15th, and we are talking about June 15th things. I'm running for Congress. Go to deanarnoldforcongress.com in order to give. Vote for me on November 3rd. We are bringing sanity to an insane world. Yes, we are. Today we're going to talk about why Chattanooga exists. My city is Chattanooga. Chattanooga, Hamilton County is the largest part of my district where I'm running for Congress. Why does Chattanooga even exist? Why do we have a Chattanooga? I got very good answers for you because I know you've been asking that question all day long, every day. What else do I want to tell you? I want to tell you that I'm trying to enable live chat in YouTube. So if you are a YouTube follower and a YouTube listener or watcher, see if you can leave a comment in the live chat, and we'll interact that way. Otherwise, just in general, comments and questions appreciated. And so go ahead and do that. Also, I had somebody say that they felt like the last few podcasts weren't as loud as the others, and I tried to adjust the volume internally, and let's see if that has made things better. Feel free to make a comment and let me know if that's the case. All right. Why does Chattanooga exist? Well, believe it or not, the answer goes back a few thousand years, maybe 6 or 7 or 8,000 years, or 18 zillion billion years, depending on your worldview. But I got a serious answer to the question, and we'll talk about Chattanooga's strategic crossroads and things that have put it on the map, and we'll go from there. But first, as usual, and as always promised, we will start with the scriptures of the day and the saint of the day. So, boom. Romans chapter 7, 1 through 13 is the epistle on the calendar today. Or do you not know, brethren, for I speak to those who know the law, that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. And Paul gets into a long thing about how if your husband or your wife dies, you're free from that marriage. And it's the same thing with the law, because Christ died, he freed us from it. Now we live with him, and freedom to marry a new bride, so to speak. But we're just going to do a small little thing for this passage. Let's scroll on down here and look at verse 7. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. On the contrary, I would not have known sin except through the law, for I would not have known covetousness unless the law had said, you shall not covet. Okay. And, he goes on and makes his points. The question here is, why did he choose that one? There's 10 commandments. There's thou shalt not murder, commit adultery, false witness, lying. But he chooses thou shalt not covet. Now, isn't that interesting? Do we know why? Well, I don't know. But I'll just say that it does show up again and again as a theme. Jesus was crucified between two criminals. Could have been any kind of criminal, but they were both thieves. All right, his main betrayer, Judas, was a little thief, stealing from the treasury. The one guy that Pilate offered to replace Jesus so he wouldn't have to be crucified was named Barabbas, and he was a thief. So this thief thing comes up again and again, thou shalt not covet, and it apparently is a very important sin to be aware of, but I don't think we're that aware of it. I got a friend who has since proposed, super guy, who on my Facebook page, when we discussed this, he said he read a book by some Catholic priest who had taken confessions all his life. And this priest said that he had never had anybody confess the sin of covetousness. It's just not on the radar. But we're a greedy people, and we're obsessed with money, and our overrulers are obsessed with money, and it's probably something we ought to be thinking about. Thou shalt not covet. All right, let's move on to the gospel passage of the day. I think similarly, I don't have a lot to say. It's more of a offhand thing or the other. But let's scroll on down to the names of the 12 disciples. First, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. Okay, just talk about this a little bit. Kind of a motley crew. But we've got a couple of Peters. No, well, not a couple of Simons. Simon Peter, we all know him. But then near the end of the list, there's this Simon the Canaanite. And there's also a Simon the Zealot. Maybe it's the same as Simon the Canaanite. But, you know, if this was a book that somebody was kind of making up, I don't think they would make it so obtuse. James, the son of Zebedee, is listed in verse 2, but you go on down, you got another James, the son of Alphaeus. Well, which James is it? That's kind of confusing. If you're writing a good novel, don't make everything so confusing. Well, they weren't writing a novel. They were telling actual history. Judas Iscariot. I think there's another Judas in the list that comes by other names. Maybe Thaddeus, or one of those things is also known as Judas. So there's a few Judases, a few Simons, a few James. Kind of confusing. Then you got a couple of brothers, Simon Peter and his brother Andrew, James and his brother John. You know, it's just a motley crew of interesting guys. So just keep that in mind. Lastly, in this passage, Jesus sent them out and he said, do not go into the way of the Gentiles and do not enter the city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So Jesus says, if you get the Gentiles, this is all about the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Go reach the Jews. And a lot of Jews were reached. But then at the end, when he ascends, and just before he ascends and he gives the big, great commission to the disciples, he says, go to the world, go to the Gentiles. So a little compare and contrast there. Last thing I want to mention here, verse 7. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Well, as you know, a lot of apocalyptic, eschatological verses in the Bible say it's at hand. My coming is at hand. The destruction of Jerusalem is at hand. The millennium is at hand. This and that and the other is at hand. Well, a lot of people have to resort to a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day to try to explain it. But at hand means at hand. And so Jesus says to them right here, the kingdom of God is at hand. Is anybody going to say the kingdom of God hasn't happened yet? It's been 2,000 years. No, we all say the kingdom of heaven happened right there. Jesus commissioned it and it was at hand. All right, just something to think about. Let us move now to the saint of the day. The saint of the day is someone y'all are familiar with, probably not familiar with because you probably hadn't read the book. But you're familiar with his name. It's the prophet Amos. So Amos, he's in the minor prophets, 12 minor prophets in the Old Testament. He was in the 8th century before Christ. He was born at Tekoa in the land of Zebulun, 6 miles south of Bethlehem. All right, Bethlehem still exists. It's under persecution by the Zionists right now. Pray for them. The kingdom was divided at that time. And anyway, we want to get down to here where Amos was chosen for prophetic service. He was sent to the kingdom of Israel to denounce King Jeroboam's impiety as well as that of the Israelites. The prophet predicted great misfortunes would befall Israel because of its ungodliness. As a result of his denunciations, he endured beatings and torture. Amaziah, the chief priest, hated Amos because he predicted that the Gentiles would conquer Israel, et cetera, et cetera. They had him beaten, but all his prophecies were fulfilled. Let's just get back to this again. Amos prophesied that Israel would be destroyed because of its disobedience. Does that sound familiar? Is there an Israel around today where there's a lot of disobedience? LGBT capital of the world, committing a genocide in Gaza, constantly destroying all the nations around it, sending people pagers as a nice little helpful gesture and causing them to blow up and kill people, and then bragging about it and sending a golden pager to Donald Trump. Anyway, is an Israel today that's kind of like the Israel of Amos's day, where he predicted they would be destroyed because of their disobedience, and then they tortured and killed him for it? Yeah, I think there's something going on similar to that today. Lord have mercy on us all. Okay, so that is the scripture of the day and the saint of the day. So let's get out of that and let's talk about our subject of the day. Any comments? Come on, people. Live chat and YouTube. See if you get any love. You may not. I did a test. My wife, it worked for her, and my mother, it did not work for her. So just because you live chat doesn't mean I'm going to see it. I don't see it now. So if you've tried to live chat in the last few minutes, try a comment in YouTube or try a comment in one of the other streams, Facebook, X. And subject of the day, why does Chattanooga exist? Okay, Chattanooga is, there it goes. I was hoping we'd have a good light today. Didn't happen. I gotta give that a lighter. Okay. Chattanooga. Chattanooga exists because it is a very strategic crossroads. If you're listening to this and you don't even know where Chattanooga is, it's in between Atlanta and Nashville and Knoxville and Birmingham. Huntsville is kind of a fifth city that's nearby, but it's right there on the border of Tennessee and Georgia. And it is a strategic crossroads. It is the only way to kind of get to the middle of the country from the southeast. I think Daniel Boone could kind of come around the Cumberland Gap up there, but you get south of that and you got to go through Chattanooga to get to the west. Lincoln, we are told, was absolutely obsessed with Chattanooga. The Civil War was kind of going on in kind of Nashville, border of Kentucky. They were all fighting it out, and Lincoln is sending his generals constant telegrams saying, hey, you got to take Chattanooga. Chattanooga is the key to the whole thing. It's got these strategic crossroads where the trains can, carry all the ammunition. But not just that, the train tracks had become the telegraph cables. And so it was a strategic communication, strategic for war. So Lincoln is obsessed with Chattanooga. He can't sleep late at night. He's sending these telegrams. And he finally gets his way, and there's a great big huge battle in Chattanooga, which one Confederate general said sealed the fate of the Confederacy. So Lincoln was probably right. This strategic crossways, the reason they built the railways there, the crossroads of the railways, was because there had been a strategic Indian war paths there for hundreds to thousands of years. And it exists today in the form of I-24 and I-75, mix in a little bit of I-59, but we won't get into that too much. But so Chattanooga is a strategic crossroads. Later, you have the Dixie Highway when the car came around, and of course the interstates. Now, why is it a strategic crossroads? Why isn't Knoxville a strategic crossroads? Why isn't Atlanta a strategic crossroads? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Are you ready? Got to bring up another deal here. So I got to remove that and say stop. And I go here and share screen. And I get over to the window. And I kind of hope this is it. We shall see. Yeah. Okay, so this graph right here, this illustration right here, kind of makes the point. Okay, so on the East Coast, it's not just drive wherever you want and go wherever you want. There's two huge mountain complexes. To the right of Chattanooga is the Appalachian Mountains, the Smokies. To the left is the Cumberland Mountains. And there's only one way really to get down here. You can go on the seacoast, which is now I-95. But if you want to get down south, otherwise you have to go through what's called the Great Valley, which is about 50 to 100 miles of non-mountains. Starts in Philly, where a lot of people migrated from the old world. You go down through Winchester. There's a battle there for good reasons. You go through Stanton and Lexington and Roanoke and Bristol, Knoxville. Okay, you're coming down Knoxville, and it should just keep going from Cleveland, Tennessee, straight to Dalton, Tennessee. I actually did a little map of that, but I won't confuse you. Can you see I think you can see my little cursor here. Yeah, so right about here is Cleveland, and it ought to go straight down here to Dalton on the way to Atlanta. And then it should go all the way to Savannah into the sea. But the interstate goes over here to Chattanooga, and the interstate goes over to Chattanooga because the river goes over here to Chattanooga, and the river goes over to Chattanooga, and then you shall see, this is Chattanooga, Moccasin Bend, Point of Lookout Mountain, Chattanooga. Then the river just cuts into the Cumberland Mountains. Like, it shouldn't do that. That's why geologists call it an illogical river. Why is this river, which is supposed to be going down the Great Valley, all the way through Atlanta to Savannah into the sea, why does it suddenly take this right turn and cut into the Cumberland Mountains, forming the second largest river gorge in the country? Nobody knows. You'll have to ask God when you get your chance. But it does. And because you have this cut into the Cumberland Mountains, you can also have a roadway by, horse and buggy, or horse and carriage, or horse or car, that goes kind of around that gorge near the river for traffic to go up into the southwest, west, and northwest. And so all traffic from the beginning of time, let me go back here, has come down here, starting with the buffalo and then the Indians and then the interstates and the railroads. They all take a big right turn over here to get to Chattanooga, and they come back out of their way. It's very inconvenient, but they do it. They have to go over Missionary Ridge. Nothing about it makes any sense except that it's just part of the geological reality. And so that's why Chattanooga exists. It is a strategic crossroads. It always has been. A couple of the things to talk about this. The first European settler in the Chattanooga area, I think I can come out of this now, was a British Indian agent named John MacDonald, 1740s, 1750s. He decides he wants to find some land for himself, so he leaves Fort Loudon, which is in greater Knoxville. And he comes down in this area looking for some land, and he decides to get land right there at the strategic crossroads. Because, hey, why not? That's a strategic place, is it not? There wasn't anybody living there. Why not? Well, they say because it was malarial, because it was kind of swampy, and it had the reputation of getting people sick. Anyway, so John MacDonald claimed that land. He was the first European settler in this area. Well, a few years later, he gets some company. Dragging Canoe. You heard of him? Well, we could do a whole podcast on Dragging Canoe, but he was one of the great Indian fighters of the 1700s, late 1700s. He was a thorn in George Washington's flesh, but he was fighting. He was not interested in peace treaties. He said that it was all fake, and he was right. It was fake news. And it took a while for him to be proven right. But so Dragging Canoe, his people, he had a father named Attakullakulla who had actually gone to London and presented before the king, and he was trying to do the nicey nice relationship kind of thing with the British, and his son Dragging Canoe said, "Nuh-uh, ain't gonna do it, not gonna work." So he came south from the Knoxville area, Fort Loudon, I guess, into this area, and he's looking for place to camp out, and he decides to join John McDonald at the strategic crossroads. So we got Dragging Canoe and his army and John McDonald doing their thing here at the strategic crossroads called Chattanooga. The exact crossroads, if you're familiar with the area, is like Brown Acres Golf Course and Eastgate Mall. The John McDonald, his first cabins were at Eastgate Mall, which he sold to the Brainerd Mission. And he moved a little farther south to what is now his house still standing in Rossville, Georgia. And this area is strategic for millennia. They say that there are settlements on Moccasin Bend, foot of Lookout Mountain, that go 12,000 years back, some of the oldest in the country. So this has been a strategic area for a long time. But Chattanooga exists because of strategic crossroads. We have strategic crossroads because the river takes an illogical right turn. Why does it take the illogical right turn? We don't know, but it does. You can read about all this in a book I wrote called Old Money, New South. I'm working on an audiobook of that right now. It's been proven to be pretty difficult. But go to Amazon, search me, get the book. It's a great book. It's been read by many, many people. Okay. No comments. Come on, y'all. I'm Dean Arnold. I'm running for Congress. Vote for me November 3rd. Give to my campaign. I haven't gotten any gifts from this podcast either. I'm like a voice crying out in the wilderness. That's okay. I will persevere. Who did I read about today who just persevered and persevered and persevered until he finally succeeded? It was, it was Elon Musk. Elon Musk failed at all sorts of things and almost died from malaria. And, he struck it rich with PayPal, and then he put all his chips back on the table and almost went bankrupt with SpaceX and Tesla. Of course, the rest is history. So anyway, I'm going to keep on with my podcast that feels like a voice crying out in the wilderness. And we're going to continue this, dude, until we see success and win in November. It's June the 15th, and I am bringing sanity to an insane world. I really am. 40 years ago, my views were considered fringe and insane. Now they're like normal because there's some crazy out there. And we'll continue to get into that as we go along. All right. I think we got everything. We're all good. Let's turn the volume back up and see you tomorrow. Dean Arnold.